people come in, they'll be able to join the conversation that we'll have today, which looking forward to. I want to welcome everyone to our June water cooler. Believe it or not, it's already June. And for those of you who are new to ORC, we do these water coolers once a month, and they're really just a space for us to learn and connect and talk about different topics. It started in the midst of COVID, and we've continued on. So it's been really a good opportunity for us all to have everyone around the table and join around different topics. And actually, I would like your help for July's water cooler. We're actually going to be taking a break from our Day in the Life series. And I would like to know what you want to have as a topic for our next water cooler in July. I have some ideas, but I'd love to hear from you. So in August, we'll resume the Day in the Life series. But for July, I'd love to get your input. So if you can send me a Teams message separately or drop your idea in the chat. As far as what the topics are, the possibilities are endless, so get creative. And then before we jump into today's water cooler, I'm going to kick us off with a culture moment and safety minute. So for our culture moment, everyone can see my screen. The fundamental for this week is find a way. So take personal responsibility for making things happen. Believe we can do it rather than explaining why it can't be done. Be resourceful and show initiative. See issues through to their completion. So that's our weekly fundamental. And then just some 4 tips for a healthy summer. For those who are experiencing those 100-degree weather temperatures, here are some tips that you can utilize. So the first one is stay hydrated. Make sure you're drinking enough water. The second one is wear sunscreen and hats, and use at least 50 SPF. Third tip is to watch for signs of heat stress. So heat exhaustion is important to be conscious of. If you're feeling dizzy or nauseous, make sure that you get inside and find cooler temperatures. And that leads me to the 4th summer tip, which is staying cool. And I hope that even though these are common sense tips, we can all utilize this information as just refreshers and reminders. All right. So a few months ago, we actually kicked off our water cooler series, A Day in the Life of, starting with our right-of-way agents, and then we followed that with our title agents and our dock specialists. And if you missed any of those and you want to watch them, you can find them in ORC Academy under the channel called ORC Water Coolers. They're all recorded there. And today we're going to continue our series by exploring a day in the life of project managers. And this will be in a fireside chat front and center with 2 of our ORC ambassadors, Joe Rohr and Ben Zara. As we put a spotlight on our project managers, we're going to get an opportunity to learn what they do, what their jobs are like, and how they impact our clients and the communities that we all serve in. And I would encourage you to take advantage of this time that we have here today to ask them questions about their jobs. So I have questions that will get us started, and if you have any, you can drop them in the chat or you can unmute your mic and ask. We'll also have some time at the end to ask any questions. So without further ado, let's get started. Joe and Ben, thank you for joining us and giving us a peek into your day-to-day. Will you each briefly introduce yourselves by sharing with us where do you work and how long have you been in the industry? And we'll start with Ben.
Yep, thanks, Keisha. I'm Ben Zara. I am a project manager out of our Cleveland, Ohio office. I joined ORC in 2006, so I'm approaching 17 years, and I came in through our training program right out of college and, worked my way up as an agent. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Joe, what about you?
Yes, I'm Joe Rohr, a project manager out of Tampa, Florida right now. I started with ORC about 7 years ago, working in the West Texas, Odessa, Texas office. I've worked on transmission lines, electric transmission and distribution lines, and doing the same out here for Hillsborough County and Tampa Electric.
Awesome. And did you start as an agent with us?
Actually, I started in title and worked my way up.
Wow. Interesting. Great. So the first question I have in general is, what do project managers do? Right? That's a basic question, but illuminate us. Joe, can you kick us off?
Sure. I guess the bulk of my time is spent talking to people, whether it's my client, our contractors, my staff, and construction companies. So a good portion of my time is communicating, and that's key for this job. I certainly spend a lot of time with financials, with my time management, making sure everybody's doing the right thing. But for the most part, it's working with the people.
Great. Thank you. And Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of balancing. It's a lot of adapting. I sometimes say I get a lot of fires to put out on a regular basis. It's dealing with, a lot of challenges, and then really just trying to market, our company and do a good job and perform for, for many of our clients.
Great. Thank you. Well, I'd like to know a little bit about the experience and qualifications that are required for the role. Like, what do you think is the most important for everyone here to know? Ben?
Yeah. So I think, having knowledge of the right-of-way process, it is important, and preferred and ideal. I mean, you don't have to understand every little thing about, about the people that you're managing in each discipline, but it certainly helps, because we're such a specialized field, and we're really knowledge-based to have that, that general knowledge. And then I think the ability to lead people, and recognize that when you succeed, or when those around you succeed, is really when you succeed. And certainly being open to, learning how to lead people, learning how to, communicate with clients and deliver projects. Financials is important. That's something that can also be learned, but it's a very critical part of our job. Making sure that we're not only managing the projects and the people, but we have to make money while doing it. So that's important. And really just an ability to work with just about anybody. There's a lot of personalities out there. From a client standpoint, I've got some that are very hands-off. I've got some that micromanage, and it's really critical that you can sort of adapt to each client and to each person really that you come in contact with, and sort of work well with those people.
Great, thank you. What I heard is having industry experience is important, having project management experience and leadership skills. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Joe?
A lot of what Ben said was spot on. I mean, there's a lot of that, and I think the other part of that, and I'll give a shout out to Chantel with the right-of-way agent when we did a day in the life of the right-of-way agent. She mentioned listening, and that's a huge part of this too, is being able to listen to what the client wants, listen to what the what's needed on a project, and taking that to heart, basically. It's something that's not always that easy. Sometimes you want to tell people what to do, but I've learned that listening to people and getting to the bottom of what happens or what's happening is key to that. And I let my agents know that if there's a problem, a landowner doesn't agree with something, or we're trying to work through something, listen to what the landowner wants. They're normally going to tell you what the problem is and work themselves into a yes, or signing an easement, or whatever we're working on at the time. So that's a huge part of it. But yeah, there's so many different parts of that. And I think being a change agent is another big part of this. I mean, that's my one constant, is everything's going to change at some point. So
yeah. Can I dig a little more into that? What does being a change agent mean for you?
It really means, I mean, once a change is identified, being able to get other people on board with it. A lot of times that's hard. People always want to do what we've always done, or this is what we're used to doing. But getting a handle on a particular change item that's going to happen, and making sure that you can get your people on board, or your contractor, or if the client makes a change, it's the client's prerogative to do that. So we have to make it work, and so it's my job to make sure that happens.
Yeah, Ben, would you say that you've experienced challenges or had unique experiences as it relates to change for being a project manager as well?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I've been around for a while, so I've seen the company change and practices change and, the development of QA/QC and, so yeah, I mean, Joe described it well. I mean, it's sort of a mindset, and I admittedly I don't love change, so it's something I have to sort of, be aware of and recognize that it's that it is a part of the process, and the quicker we can adapt it and recognize that there's times there's better ways to do things. There's going to be changes in the schedule. The better off we all will be.
Yeah, the change is constant, right? And we're dealing with changes from our clients, with our people, with our organization. What tip do you have for anyone who's struggling with overcoming a change? What do you tell your teams when you're sitting down with them and asking them to really understand, like, what's been the most valuable thing that you can use in those conversations?
Typically, there is a reason why we're changing things, and usually it's for the positive. Sometimes it's a painful process to get through it, but normally, if we are changing a process or, there's usually an end game there. So, helping them understand, that hopefully, that the change will bring something better down the road, will certainly help. And
So helping them to see the bigger reasons of the change is what I'm hearing. Helping them see that.
And I know, Keisha, you've used the phrase "what's in it for me," which is also, helpful. People need to understand, sort of how change impacts them. So the more we can communicate that, I think the better off we'll be toward getting through that, whatever that change is.
Absolutely. Joe, did you have anything to add?
No, I mean, well, yeah, I always have something to add, but I think a lot of it is going back to what I talked about listening, because a lot of people think that a change is happening just because we want to change stuff up, make it more difficult for them, or at least they get that feeling, and that's never the case. I mean, there's always an end game, like Ben said. It's always to make something more efficient, or the client has decided to take a different route. So, it's really just listening to your staff and making sure that you understand what their issues are and working through them.
I love that. Thanks for exploring that a little off track for what I was going to go into, but I appreciate you exploring the avenue with me. I'm hearing that change, uh, managing people and having leadership skills are really important for a project manager. And Ben, you had said financials as part of project management. And what I'm also hearing is the biggest difference between your other roles and your current role as a PM is when you're in your other roles, you're focused on hitting your own goals. When you're in a project manager role, you're transitioning to focus on helping your team hit their goals, right? And so that seems to be the biggest difference to me. Would you both agree that when it comes to the roles you played before that weren't in a management role, now your current roles really are around and centered around helping others?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Okay. So what does a typical work day or work week look like for you? I have some inclinations, some thoughts, but I'd love to hear from you. Ben, will you kick us off?
Yeah, so one of my notes I wrote here is to be adaptable. My weeks, uh, I'm a planner by nature, and I really do my best to plan, how my week will go, but it rarely follows what I want it to do. And, so being adaptable, being flexible, is critical, for a lot of different reasons. Um, an example I had too was that, I constantly will get, a lot of last minute requests from clients for proposals or, hey, I meant to email you last week, but, I forgot to, and I need this tomorrow by noon. Can you drop what you're doing? And, it's sort of, it's just a part of the, a part of the job where you just got to be able to be flexible and communicate very well. So yeah, I mean, my work week goes into a lot of different directions. but being adaptable, being flexible, because it's not going to go, it very rarely goes the way that you think it will. So.
What about you, Joe?
It's funny. I had to laugh when I heard Ben talking about that. I wrote basically the same thing that, I wish I could go by my agenda. It never works that way. There's always something happening. There's always a phone call, a fire to put out. But the one thing I try to do is I will pick something each day that I need to accomplish, whether that's going over my financials or sitting down and having a one-on-one with some employees or reviewing a project. So I try to at least knock out one key element off of my agenda each day. And if I do that and get everything else done, then I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, so I heard planning and organizing is really, really critical because you have so many things to adapt to. And I'll use your expression, bend fires to put out. And it sounds like your typical work week, work day doesn't look the same. Joe, I do the same thing. I have a sticky note here and I put I call it MIT's most important things at the top. And I write down a list of 3 to 5 things that I have to get done that day. And then at the end of the day, I can crumple it up and throw it away. And in my brain, that feels like, a good thing that I can get rid of it. It's gone, it's done. Do you have any other tips for how to stay organized when you are planning?
From my standpoint, I think the one thing is that I do is I take a step back sometimes and, I'll go for a walk and just come back and kind of regroup. I have a tendency to put my head down and, 5 hours later, and I'm not always that good when I do that. So I make myself get up, walk around, and, come back, regroup, relook at everything. A lot of the times something makes more sense or I've got a better idea. So that's a big one for me to, just kind of, not get stuck in this tunnel vision of a task that I'm working on and, so not get too involved in it.
That's a fantastic suggestion. Ben, do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Sometimes you got to just walk away and take a breath. I know you mentioned about lists and stuff. I've read somewhere that if you shorten those lists to, like, Joe said, 2 or 3 things, that it's a little bit, easy more. You set yourself up for, to accomplish it and get through it a little easier than if you have a list of 30 things that you're trying to get through in a given day. So it's trying to prioritize what's important, what takes precedent. And yeah, it's.
Yeah. Do you guys do the most in terms of what you tackle first? Do you do the thing that takes the most energy first, or do you do it last? Curious.
It depends on my end. I mean, I try to prioritize like projects and clients first, their needs. So, and that sort of, it's like you have a number of things that have to happen and get done. They're all important, but you do sort of have to prioritize and, so now whether I do the most difficult things first, it probably depends.
Well, we have a question from Beth. How do you handle a change by the client that doesn't make sense? Interesting one. Put you guys on the spot.
I think that's in real life from Beth. I think we're dealing with that right now. So, it's really going to come down to, I go back to communicating and listening. We need to find out exactly what they're trying to accomplish. And I think sometimes some of these changes come by from, there's an issue and they're trying to figure out how to solve that issue, but a particular change might not be the right way to do it. So, when I get in situations like that, I schedule a meeting and I sit down and we go over everything and again try to find out what the end, what they're trying to accomplish basically, and then go from there. And if I know that, then I can have some value input and try to help it out. It doesn't always work. Sometimes the client does something that it doesn't matter. We're going to have to do it one way or another. My 5th spreadsheet and it's all repetitive, but if that's what they want, that's what they want. We have to do it. But big changes like that, it's important to know exactly what the end game is and what they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So setting up that time to actively listen to the client, understand what they're trying to accomplish will hopefully set you up for a win-win approach, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes it easier for me to go back to my people and explain what's happening and why this change is taking place.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, we don't want to just change for change's sake, right? We need to know why.
Yeah.
Ben, any advice for Beth on that one?
I mean, yeah, it happens a lot, and I think the key thing is, depending upon how knowledgeable the client is, like some clients are very knowledgeable, some aren't. So I think understanding that end and really, I sort of look at it as we're here to advise them. We're the experts on the process, so and we've got a lot of experience. So I think it's important to sort of be very clear and respectful of what we believe versus what they want. But ultimately, within reason, we're going to do what they ask us to do. But I do think it's important to sort of, be very direct on what we believe is the correct approach, because sometimes that's, if we communicate that way, they see it, from our perspective, and they say, well, yeah, that does make sense. We thought we wanted to do it this way, but now that you've sort of I know with myself, I try to draw from experience too and say that, here's a similar situation where maybe we did this and this is how it panned out. The more I can sort of pull from past work, I feel like the more influence I can have over maybe getting things the way that I want them to go. But again, it's hit or miss. At the end of the day, we're going to do what they want us to do.
Yeah, there are limitations, but I'm hearing that what's helpful is leaning in on the fact that they hired us because we are experts in what we do, right? And we are experts in this industry. So I think that was, Ray says, well said. I agree. Well said. Giving clients guidance is a primary role of being a consultant, and that's what we're here to do. So we talked a little bit, you guys helped us understand a little bit about what your typical workday and week look like for you. And I heard dynamic, ever changing, having to be adaptable, but let's get a little more granular in terms of what are the different jobs or tasks that make up your typical day or week. Can you give us this is like behind the scenes, what are some of the things that make up the jobs that you do? We'll go ahead with Joe.
I think a lot of it is managing the project. That's, the main thing. So I go in and look at where we stand on a project, and a lot of my people know I will go in and kind of the background and go through our line list or go through our project list and get a good feel for where we are. That way I can go and talk to my staff about it and be knowledgeable and know where we are in a particular project. So that's a big one. And the financials, it's easy to drop that and not pay attention to it, but every time I think about it, I pull it up in Vantage Point and run my dashboard and see where I stand on that. So those are two big ones, but for me, a lot of it is touching base with the people that work with me and making sure that they're in the right path, they're engaged, they know what's going on, and a lot of times people think that we're so busy they can't come to us and talk to us about an issue. So taking the initiative and actually asking some questions and finding out if everything's okay or if I can help in any way is another huge one for me. So I wrote down when I was doing this, preparing for this, was in a way, I'm a cheerleader, I'm a reviewer, a controller, a leader, a counselor. There's a lot of that goes into that, but the nuts and bolts of it are the projects that we're running and making sure that they're running smooth and that the client's happy, the contractors are happy, and everything's running the way it's supposed to.
I love it. So just to recap, the projects are running smooth, clients are happy, and the people have what they need.
Absolutely.
Ben, anything different to add?
And I agree with everything Joe said. But for some perspective on our office, we've got I'm probably typically working with anywhere between, I estimated about 25 to 35 clients at any given time. And we've got currently about 65 projects in our office that are open in some form. So, you know, I'm pulled in a lot of different directions, from that end. But I sort of looked back and broke down, like almost from a percentage standpoint of my weeks and days, and say I'd probably spend about 25% of my time on proposals. Um, and that's both cost proposals where we're just being asked for fees, and technical proposals where we haven't won a project, but we're basically developing a narrative response to an RFP where we're proposing, to be selected and then hopefully go through fee negotiations after that. I would probably say about 60% of my time is project-related work, meaning interacting with the agents, dealing with project-related issues, status updates, billings, financials, that sort of thing. And the other probably 15% is probably focused on either planning, like my thought process is usually like, 6, 12 months out, where are we going to be? What are we going to be doing? And then business development. So really out there marketing, clients and relationships and trying to leverage that to get ahead of postings to put ourselves in a position, to hopefully win work. So yeah, that's sort of a high level summary of where my typical days and weeks.
I love that you shared those insights with us and broke it down by percentage. Thank you for doing that. It definitely gives a different perspective, and you're not detail oriented or anything. So, you mentioned planning, and I'm curious to know, like, how well do you plan your day? You said 6 to 12 months you're planning out in advance. And are you planning any further than that? Are you planning more of a short term and long term? How does that work for you?
The long-term planning is more workload related and staffing related. Sort of looking at, the next, what ends up happening is for the next probably 3, 6 months, typically, I have a good idea of what work we have coming, but it's that 6 month and beyond period of, trying to get more work secured and under contract. So, yeah, I mean, that's sort of the thought process there with the long term. But then the short term, I mean, yeah, the planning on a daily basis. I mean, I had some comments about I like to start early in the morning, and really focus on things early on to sort of help myself. But yeah.
Great. I heard proposals and business development. How much do each of you spend in terms of time within those two aspects of the job? Joe, do you spend a lot of time in proposals and business development?
Business development is something I'm just getting started on, and I'm looking forward to it. I've finally got my staff together, and I've got the right people that are helping me out. So that's fantastic, and that's a key part of what I'm trying to do. So I'm going to spend more and more time doing that. From the proposal side right now, not really. We're trying to grow Florida, so the business development side is gonna take up more of my time. So then I can be busy putting together proposals and cost estimates. So that's where we are right now, and the same with West Texas.
No, that's great. So what I'm understanding is it can look different for a project manager based on, what the growth is in that current region and where you guys are in your status and your projects and things like that, what your capacity is for those types of tasks, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's a good question that I just know everyone is dying to understand. When it comes to rest, how are you balancing your professional and personal life? How are you shutting this off and being able to take time with family and friends and really recharge? As I think rest is so important. And Joe, you hit on this when you said, sometimes when my head's down, I'm in 5 hours into the work, I have to step back and recharge. But how are you balancing your personal and your professional life? Really?
Well, it's a tough one. And I think as a project manager that I've always got things going on in my head. I'm always trying to figure stuff out. But, you know, a lot of times when I get up in the morning is when I start thinking about, you know, what my day is going to look like, you know, how I'm going to do that. And I make sure to, you know, unwind. So, you know, when my day is done, and it's not always at 5 o'clock, but, you know, I do my best to do that. I get out, you know, take a walk my dog, walk with my wife, relax a little bit. But there's always times that I think of something in the middle of the evening and go and jump in front of my computer or make a note. And a lot of times those are the best ideas that I have is, you know, I've unwound a little bit and had a chance to sit there and think. I run 3 or 4 times a week, and that's another great time for me to just kind of detach, shut everything down, and you know, start fresh again. So it's not easy. Vacations have been historically hard for me to just completely, you know, no emails, no nothing. But you know, it's something we need to work on, and something that I've gotten better at, especially with delegating work and making sure that there's other people that know what needs to be done, so I can shut down a little bit.
Oh, great. That's really nice to hear. I was hoping you were going to mention the delegation word. So when you're talking about, you know, being able to take vacation and sometimes when we want to recharge and we don't, it's a self-imposed limitation, right? It's oh my gosh, I have to be in front of my computer and read all the emails, but we can set some boundaries in place to ensure that we can have some time away. And I'm glad to hear that you are putting those in and working on them. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Joe, you know, I do take breaks during the day and sort of like, you know, I get out and walk. I make sure I eat lunch. You know, you got to do these things because it's very easy to get caught up, you know, in the days and weeks. Um, I would say like early on when I became a manager, I felt a big pressure to really like prove myself, both internally and externally. And to give some perspective too, I became a manager when I was 27, and I was relatively for what I consider young, you know, so early on as a manager, I think I did not do the best job with balancing. It was very much, you know, I have to ensure at all costs that I deliver, you know, and make sure that this opportunity that I do well with it. Um, the longer I've done the job, the more I think I've improved on being able to disconnect and, you know, and it's important. You know, I do my best to, you know, understand and remind myself that the work will be there. You know, and once you've developed relationships and, you know, and Joe and I are in a different spot. You know, Joe's building relationships. I'm sort of maintaining, I feel like at this point. Um, you know, but I find that that a lot of clients, most clients are understanding, you know, when you say that I just can't, you know, I can't do this right now, or I'm going to be away during this time. You know, so it's not as big of an issue as maybe I had initially thought it was very early in my, you know, my years. And I would also say too, and I think Joe mentioned it, communication is like key. When I would leave, I didn't early on, I didn't always do a good job with really letting everybody that was important in my job know about it. So meaning like clients, and whereas now I'm very proactive, like 2 weeks in advance, when I talk to people, both internally and externally, I start to prep them that, you know, I'm going to be out or I'm going to be away, or, you know, that eliminates like 90% of the problems that arise when I am away, because they start to, you know, they know, or they see my away message and they're like, yeah, Ben told me about that, you know. So there's little things like that that you can sort of do, and I think that applies for everybody, not just managers, but anybody in this field. You know, if you're going to be away or you need to take some time, you know, just let people know, explain it, and, you know, prep them for it so that when they need something, you know, they're not surprised.
I love that you bring that up. And I think that's such a great example that, again, applicable to everyone. But when you are communicating clearly up front in advance, it allows that person, if they have anything on their radar that they would consider urgent, to be able to ask you up front within that 2-week period, right, or 3-week period that you prep them in advance. They can then bring it to your attention, and then you can determine how you can, you know, incorporate that into your tasks. And so I think that's a really great tip. And both of you have really great perspectives from your experiences that you've shared. Felipe asks, he says that you're pulled in several directions daily. Can you share some time management tips, such as like software that you use? How do you do that?
I use OneNote a lot. I mean, I'm looking at OneNote here to an extent with some notes I put together for this call. So I do use OneNote to sort of track. I track week by week, on my tasks and things that I don't accomplish in a given week. I copy over to the next week. I live by Outlook. I'm very focused on if somebody needs me, it needs to be in Outlook so that I can plan. And yeah, I use technology to help.
Okay, good to know. It's not just written in a notebook somewhere. You lose the notebook, what happens with your whole task list? So, Joe, what about you? Anything you're using?
You just had to mention the notebook, didn't you?
Ah,
No, I use Teams a lot actually, and that's a good way for me to be able to stay in touch with some of my people, either through chat, making sure my calendar is up to date. That's a huge one, and I urge all of my staff to use their calendar. That way, I can look and see and I've told them if you call me and I don't answer, it's not because I don't want to talk to you, but I might be in a meeting, so check my calendar. And yeah, I do a lot of that. I do carry around a notebook, but the purpose of that is that once I write it down, I remember it. So I have to have something to write it down. So if something pops up in a meeting or something like that, I jot it down and it's there. But I do use OneNote. And I use my phone a lot, probably more than I should, but I write notes down constantly, when I'm out and about doing something. So, but yeah, very similar. I mean, technology is great as far as all that's concerned, but I do have my trusty notebook as well.
that's great. And so the key to all of this is really find out the process that works for you. Maybe you're trying something, it doesn't work, try something else until you find kind of your rhythm and you find the tools that best support you, that you feel you vibe with the most. Some other technology programs that are out there that you can use is Microsoft To Do. It's a list application or app in our computers that you can use. I find that to be really helpful. And the scheduling assistant tool in Outlook is huge. When you're going to send a meeting to other people, if your calendars are up to date, you can find times in the Outlook calendar that fit within your schedule and other people's schedules. And I think that's often overlooked as a tool that we could take advantage of. So just a couple more questions, and if anyone else has anything, please drop them in the chat. We'll continue to keep this going for another couple minutes, but please, again, take time to think of questions if you have any and share them with us. What are some of the biggest challenges you have faced as a PM, and have you been successful in overcoming those challenges? And whoever wants to start with that one.
I would say, go ahead, Joe.
I was just going to say that my biggest challenge has been the staff, and it's enjoyable. I love doing it, but there's not always an issue, but there's always something to pay attention to, and a lot of times you have to have those difficult conversations, but most of the time when I've gotten to that point, they pay off. It's worth having those conversations with people. So yeah, that's probably the hardest part, because you get a lot of reward from it, but there's also a lot of heartache, when you're dealing with people, and it's never fun to have to deal with people in a negative manner, but that has to happen as well. So that's a huge one for me, but it is, again, a huge sense of pride for me. And, when I can work with somebody and have them accomplish their goals, that's all I ask for most of the time as far as a manager.
Yeah, difficult conversations, that takes me back to the ability for a project manager to give quality feedback. And what's your take on the timing of feedback? Do you find it important to wait to do it right away, or do you wait until like like a formal feedback session. How do you handle that?
Yeah, it depends on what the situation is or the issue, but I'm really all for as soon as I can, and whether that's in person or a phone call. I don't like it to sit there because, you know, sometimes a person might think everything's fine or there's not an issue, and then they're
Yeah.
surprised when I do have a meeting with them. So yeah, the sooner the better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing is the value of that would be to help them course correct as soon as possible for those feedback sessions, and not to, you know, harp on someone, but to help them course correct. It's really a helpful conversation. Sometimes we can be defensive when we're getting constructive feedback, but when you can handle it in a way that it's about course correcting and helping your employees see that there's value in this feedback, then we can think of it and reframe it as, okay, feedback is an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Ben, what about you? What are some of your bigger challenges that you face as a PM, and how have you overcome them?
Probably because it's front of mind right now. I would probably say clients can be challenging. You know, I work on the government side, of the public sector side, and there's a lot of red tape and just processes with government, and you know, it's funny, like, you know, having a really good client, you know, like we can do everything right on our end, but if our client is not really on top of what they need to do and holding their obligations, it can really, you know, derail us. Because we've looked at, like, well, what makes a project successful and what doesn't, and it doesn't always, just because we've done everything right on our end. Sometimes, you know, it doesn't go the way we want because maybe the person that we're working for, you know, isn't holding up their end of the process. So, you know, but for every challenging client, I mean, the majority of them, you know, are great to work with. I don't want to come across as that person, but staffing, I've been lucky with staffing. You know, we have a great team, and we've, you know, our newest, most of our people here in Cleveland have been around at least 5 years. So I've got a great team. I know everybody's dealing with, you know, hiring issues, and while I've dealt with that over the years, you know, I haven't recently so much, just because we've been able to sort of maintain a really good, you know, team up here.
That's great. No, I appreciate both of your perspectives. I want to open it up to anyone that has questions. We have a few more minutes. Does anyone have anything for Ben or Joe that they would like to ask? All right, we have one. That was quick. Brandon asks, he says, as a project manager in the structure we have at ORC, how important is the growth of your agents, and how would you handle promoting their professional growth, even if it ultimately means losing a key member of the team? Great question, Brandon.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, you have to invest in, you know, in your staff, and you have to sort of take the mindset that, you know, your personal growth will come from those, you know, succeeding around you. And there are times where, you know, tough decisions have to be made on, you know, if you're right, if you promote somebody, does that mean somebody else no longer, you know, maybe with us? These are the tough, you know, tough decisions and tough things about this position. You know, but I think that you have to provide opportunity for those that want to grow, and you have to be willing to invest in them, knowing that you may lose them, because the alternative is, if you hold them back, and, you know, at least from a personal standpoint, it's not the way that I would want it to go.
I love that. And that reminds me of a quote I use often. The CFO asks the CEO, what happens if we invest in our people and they leave? And the CEO says to the CFO, what happens if we don't invest in them and they stay? So
Yeah.
That's the flip side of it. And Joe, do you have anything to add for Brandon's question?
You know, for me, that's probably the most enjoyable part of all this is seeing my staff grow and you know, get promoted and realize their goals. So, you know, it's always fun for me to do that. I love having people that want to grow. I've got some fantastic people working with me in Tampa, and that's where we are right now. We have people that are growing, allowing me to delegate and give them more responsibility. So it's an exciting time for us, and I love doing that. And you know, if the opportunity comes and they move somewhere else and continue to move up, then I'm very happy for them.
That's awesome. Great leadership. Question from Kathy. Are you using any database that ORC offers, like ArcGIS or other? If so, please share to what extent that it makes you more efficient.
We are using Parcel Suite on 3 projects right now. And you know, it's something that the client, I think we were selected partly because of it. And, you know, the client really likes the fact that they can get in and sort of access all of our documents and the up-to-date information. The ArcGIS, I am not using that actively on a project right now, but I have used it twice when doing proposals for projects. So we had set up meetings with clients where we knew that that they were going to be posting projects, and I had worked with Eric to sort of structure, you know, I guess a template or, you know, on their exact project. And we did sort of an early meeting to talk about, you know, our approaches and sort of sell ourselves. And we used that as an example where they could see not only what we can offer, but it was sort of tailored into, you know, that specific project. And it didn't take a lot of effort on my end. You know, I sent the request, Eric knocked it out in, you know, probably a few hours. So it was a very, you know, easy thing that I think added a lot of value to ORC as a team when we were proposing.
Wow, that's great. Joe?
Yeah, actually, we right now we're using or having a map book created by the GIS department, and Eric and Travis have both been fantastic in helping us with this. The client requires us to, once we finish what's called a lateral or a part of a project, when we turn it in for review and approval, we need to have a map book, and so they create this based on the engineering drawings and the, you know, a Google Earth snapshot. It's been fantastic. The client loves it. It's very informative, but very clean. And yeah, my hat's off to the IT department.
Wow, I love these innovative ideas. We're leveraging technology to add value for our clients. And I heard that, Ben, you said it didn't take much for you to do. It was very efficient. So all those little things make the big differences, and that's exciting. As always, hats off to our IT department. Yes, Rita, agree with you.
I agree.
Any other questions that we have for Ben or Joe?
Hey, Keisha, can I do a shameless plug?
Please, as long as it's appropriate.
So my opinion is that the PM role is probably the most important role in the firm. It's the machine, it's the engine that makes the machine run. I mean, these guys are hypercritical to the success of the firm. And for those folks on the call that are considering a move into project management role, you can tell from these folks' demeanors, these guys, what they're saying, what they're putting out there. A project manager is a giver, not a taker. They spend an awful lot of their time managing their programs, and everybody's got a different role. The project manager role in this firm is enormous, and Ben's focus is going to be different than Joe's focus, as they described. But they're givers, and their focus is on their staff, and their vision is not insular anymore. It's not about themselves. It's about everyone else around them. And it's about the commitment to the firm and what's good for the firm. Some of these questions are real good about what do you do with staff development, creating a person in a position that's going to move on or make them better. I mean, both Joe and Ben hit the nail on the head. These guys are givers, and they're going to help promote that individual's success matrix, whatever it is, because it's good for the firm, but it's also good for the individual. And that's our commitment to the staff that are available. And also at the same time, it serves the commitment to the firm. So they have the kind of vision that extends beyond just their own selves and their own roles and their own departments into a larger scale. And that's why these guys are successful. And Ben made a good point. You know, when you start out as a PM, this is for the other folks who are looking to move into the role, you start out as a PM, you're going to look back in 10 years and say, man, I didn't do that really well. And that's probably consistent with every new role that someone takes on. But these guys take on an enormous amount of responsibility. we appreciate all their help being change champions. That's enormous. And spoiler alert at the managers meeting, this prioritization topic that was discussed earlier about creating lists and developing lists, and that kind of discussion leads directly to the ability to delegate, as Joe has mentioned. And delegation process is important to get the staff trained up to see what these folks do on a day-to-day basis. So lists are really, really important, and we'll cover that. But what that helps them do is delegate, and what delegation helps us do is grow stronger staff. So hats off to the PMs. All due deference to the other corporate management folks on the call, but I think the PMs have probably one of the toughest roles in the firm to accomplish well. They're either busy or they're busy trying to get busy. Hats off, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Wow.
Ray.
Wow, thank you so much, Ray. I think that says a lot about our PM roles, of course, and I echo everything that Ray says. And anyone, again, who is considering moving into a PM role, you have some questions to ask yourself, like what type of a project manager could you be, or would you want to be? Why are you looking to be in a PM role? Is it because you just want the title, or you want the promotion, or is it you really want to help group success? You really want to help the firm succeed. You have that giver framework over a taker framework mindset. I think those are really important questions to ask, right? Not only for the firm's success, but also you're going to be more successful if you have the right mindset going into a role such as that. And yeah, I just over and over and over again, I'm hearing delegation. I'm hearing the leadership skills. So being a project manager, there is a difference between managing and leading, right? So think and reflect a little bit about that. And I would also add to the delegation discussion that to delegate, yes, you need to plan and organize, but you also need to be able to trust. And I think trust is a huge component of delegation. Any other questions? We'll wrap this up. Jordan says, really well done, guys. The PM role is far more challenging than most understand. The range of responsibilities are endless and all tasks need to be accomplished yesterday. Thank you both and all our PMs for all they do for ORC. Agreed. Well, can I just ask Ben, Joe, do I have your permission to give everyone permission on this call to reach out if they have any other questions that they didn't get a chance to ask?
Oh, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thanks for being willing to take some of those offline in case someone didn't get their question answered. I want to just thank you both for your time preparing and really thinking through how to give the sneak peek to your day-to-day. I know that what we covered today is just a glimpse into your day-to-day and your roles overall. It's really not the majority. So thank you for all that you do. And continue being the great leaders that you are. We really appreciate that. And yeah, we'll see everyone on our next water cooler in July. And if you have any ideas, please send them to me. I'm looking for ideas for our July water cooler. Thanks, everyone.